After probably about 3 years of fighting with it, I got my left-hand headlight fixed on my Dodge pickup. And the headlight started going haywire on it about 3 or 4 years ago, and then I had it fixed once down at a dealership when I drove it south, and then fall of 2014 it started flickering and then went out. And I was worrying about it being the tipm module, the totally integrated power module. Everything I'd read online and stuff indicated that that's a big problem with these Dodges, and there's no place to get them fixed here. I tried to get it fixed in Anchorage in the winter of 2014, early 2015, when we drove up there, but of course I couldn't get it into the dealership there for 6 months. Anyway, we wound up driving it home without it getting it fixed. Fortunately, the headlight came on for a while coming through Alaska because it got so cold. It was 40 below. The problem wound up being a pin in the headlight circuit, and I think shrunk the metal up enough in the pin that it made contact. So as soon as we got into warm weather, it quit again. We haven't been anywhere for a couple of years since then, except locally, so it's 1,000 miles or more to get to the nearest dealer where I could get it fixed. So I started looking at it a few days ago and troubleshot it, found out it was a pin and not the tipm unit, and got it fixed. So now I've got both high beam headlights as well as the low beam headlights work now good on it, which is really nice for driving in the dark. And in this country, it's right now it's 1st October and it gets dark at about 7:30, and later on, as like in December, it'll get dark at about 3 o'clock or 3:30. I spend a lot of time driving in the dark here. Driving out the roads on a dark and wet night, it has been a problem. The real problem was when we go south to Canada or something like that. Which, anyway, I've got those fixed now. Part of the thing that I had thinking about, since it cost over $1,000 to fix one of those tipm modules, plus even in the best of conditions, these headlights suck on these things. They're not very bright, and after seeing the way they got 16 or 18 gauge wire going to those headlights, and you can't run enough amperage into those headlights to really have a bright light. Even with both of them working when you're driving on the freeways where there's lots of light, it's not a problem, but most of our driving's on back roads or roads through unimproved areas through Canada, Alaska, where it's dark, there's no street lights or anything else, and very little traffic. And the best, when they work right, they don't work very good. I decided to try to supplement my light system with this LED light bar. And I was going to hook it up, figuring I'd use it in place of the high beam headlight, but since I got it fixed, then it's just supplement my regular light. And I've seen quite a few guys have these big light bars mounted up on their roofs. To me, that's kind of a dumb idea. I get to get the big light bars up there, but then all the light lights up in your windshield and on your hood and everything, and so you lose a lot of your night vision and the capacity of the lights for that. I wanted to mount it on the front. I don't have a light bar or anything here on the front, or a bumper, just a standard bumper. No, I got this 24-inch unit. It's supposed to be 120 watts, and my idea was to mount it right in here in this slot between the bumper here. But everything's curved on this truck, and this light bar is not curved, and it doesn't exactly fit in there the way that I wanted it to. So I'll mount that on there like that. So I've got to make a bracket to bolt into this bumper. I've got this nice big, looks like a 2-inch piece of angle aluminum, and I'll cut off a couple of sections of it to use to make a bracket, and I'll bolt that onto the bumper, and then I can mount the light bar onto this. Well, I took that piece of angle aluminum over to the shop, and I cut off 2 chunks, 2 inches each, and cleaned them up, rounded the inches over, drilled a couple holes in them, and then powder coated them. So that'll be the mount then onto the bumper for the light. So while I was doing that, while those were cooking in the oven, and a little bit afterwards actually, I opened up the tipm unit, and I took my label maker here and made some labels, stuck in there on them. So I was going to use this 20 amp accessory fuse circuit here for, I guess this one here, for, this is for the cigarette lighter. I was going to use it to tap off of, to run the solenoid off of, and I still might do that, although anyway, it doesn't make any difference. I'm only using an amp or so off of that for that circuit, so I can use one of these other circuits if I wanted to that don't use very often or wouldn't use at the same time. For example, the pedal adjustment circuit would work because you don't use that when you have the lights on, or you wouldn't be using that switch at the same time. So anyway, got to looking here, and this fuse right here is for a power sunroof. It's a 20 amp circuit. I don't have a power sunroof, so I may tap off of that. I was just going to run the lights straight off the battery, but I may tap off of that to run the lights off of. I might try that. So anyway, the next thing to do is to go ahead and run those taps in there for that, and I've got to run a wire into the cabin for the switch for the solenoid, and then run wires for the lamps, get the lamps set, the light set up, drill a hole in there. So I'm going to have to drill a hole into this cover, I guess, for the tipm unit to run the wires out of, because I don't see any other way to get them out of there. I could take that thing apart again and try to run the wires down through the bottom. Think about that. Running wires for the solenoid for this LED lamp light bar, and this is just a roll of two wire wire. I think it's a 16 gauge or 18 gauge, which is plenty for that solenoid. I just run it down through. I'd run previously through down there some wires for the turn signals in the mirrors, and there's a little pocket down there that goes through the firewall, a little grommet. So I just run that wire through there, pulled it out on the inside. I took this little lower panel off underneath the steering wheel to make it a little easier to pull that wire through and route it up alongside the other wire bundles. And that just, it's got two screws here underneath it, little tabs that hold it in to the framework here in the dash panel, and then there's just tabs that pop out, it pops out of. So I've put that back in now. I haven't put the screws back in it yet, but got this snapped back in, and the wire ran. And then this is the bezel for the center console. You got the heat controls here. Down here is for the four-wheel drive. Well, this is four-wheel drive. Down here is for the exhaust brake and rear window and tire pressure indicator switch thing. And anyway, I pull that off, and that just pops out of there. And then we've got all these plugs here into everything. They just unplug. So then this little panel here that has mine has the three switches on it, one for the exhaust gas and one for the rear window and so on. So that we just took it out. There's 4 screws that hold it in right there. So I just popped that whole thing out of there, and then we took it over into the shop and we're getting it prepped. I've got these wires run out here. These will be for the solenoid switch. This little one is a ground, and there's a screw right in here behind this panel that goes into just the sheet metal framework around this dash panel, and I put an eye on this little wire here and put it into that ground. This wire is just a ground for the LED lamp in the switch. This wire here will split it, and one of those will go to the battery or to a positive terminal in the tipms module, and then the other one will go down to the solenoid switch for the lamp, for the headlight, for the LED light. This is the switch, the panel that I took out of that center control bezel. You can see, there it goes here. This is for the EG exhaust brake. It gets used quite a bit. This is for the rear window. It doesn't get used at all. In the light load thing, it doesn't hardly get used either. And what I did, now there's space on here for more switches for things that I don't have. And I took one of these empty bays here. This will be the switch for the LED light. And I was hoping I could put it up and down like this, but it doesn't quite fit in there. There's just not quite enough room for, see, it'd fit in there, but these spring clamps here that hold it in, there's just not enough room for them. What I did here was I laid this out in here, centered it in this bay, and then I took a scribe and scribed the line around that that switch in the center of that bay, and I just used a jeweler's screwdriver for that. And then I took a Dremel tool with this little burr on it, and just kind of roughed out that square. And then I started taking some little rasp files, heavy-duty files or coarse files, and started just taking the material out. I went ahead and put that switch in there a little tighter and scribed the lines around it again where it's a little closer to the finished size now. But I'll just keep doing that. I'll just keep working with these files, and I use a little finer file, and go ahead and file that out and snap that switch in there, and it's going to go like this or like this. I haven't decided yet, one way or the other. This is what I've got hooked up just temporarily. I've got that hooked up to a 9-volt battery and to the solenoid switch. There's the solenoid switch, and so I can flip that on. Finally figured out how that worked. But I had to run power directly from the battery and then take the output out through the solenoid to get enough resistance in the line to shunt a little bit of power through this side over here is the side for the LED light, and to get enough power cross over into that LED light so it could light up. I had to run the power to here, through here, and then through the solenoid. I might have been able to just run ground wire, or the wire off the ground, wire the solenoid into the battery directly, and then run the ground wire through the switch. And I tried that, and then they could just go to ground. I wouldn't have to run so many wires on it. And I tried that, but that would work for the solenoid, turning it on and off, but the LED light wouldn't light up. Well, if I put a inline resistor in that return for where it goes to ground, if I had to put a resistor in there, then that might have been enough to make that work, but I don't know where my resistors are, so we didn't do that. Got the switch in the panel there now, and doesn't look too bad. So that's the way it'll look. The light will be on this side when it's turned on, and off when it's turned off. So that's it. There, it snaps right into that little hole that I made for it. It fits in that little cavity there just fine. So now we'll go put that back in the center console and the bezel there, and splice up or put some connectors on the ends of those wires, and put everything back together inside the cab of the pickup. I got my interior all back together. Well, I got the exterior all back together too, and here's the switch. That's pretty bright. Might have to dim that down somehow. But anyway, it fits in there right with all the rest of the switches. It doesn't look too bad. Okay, there's the LED mounted there in that gap. There's the 2 brackets that I made there. Drilled them into the bumper. Now, Here's the solenoid for the LED light. There's a hole here in this post in this frame already, so I just put a bolt in there, a screw in there with a nut on the back side of it to hold that solenoid on there. Run the wires down through the headlight, took the headlight out and run the wires down through that cavity behind the headlight. And this is the power for the LEDs, and I just tied it onto that power tab that goes to the tipm thing. Anyway, I did that, and this is the wire that goes to the switch for the solenoid. I just went ahead and tied them into that cable there rather than going to the battery. I really didn't find any place, any way that I liked to get into that tipm to use one of those sockets for a fuse, so that's the way we did it. Anyway, it works.